My parents spent my college fund on bros' DUIs. Years later they begged for $38,000 for rehab. I refused. 10 months later, he's gone. I chose my peace. Hello, Reddit. My parents spent years bending the universe around my brother, expecting me to simply cope with the consequences. I eventually left and established my own life. I thought that would be the end of it. It was not. This is how it all began. My name is Wesley. I'm in my early 30s now, with a regular tech job that covers the bills yet leaves me alone. I'm married, have a small house, and lead a fairly typical life, yet none of this stems from where I grew up. My family was the kind you survived, not the kind you relied on. That's something I learned early on. My older brother, Atticus, has always been the center of my life. He was the type of child who could turn a routine morning into a disaster before breakfast. Broken lamps, screams, slammed doors, school calls, all normal for him. If he wasn't ranting, he was bashing holes into walls or fighting someone. If he wasn't fighting, he was lying about something unnecessary. That was simply who he was. My parents, Harlow and Ronan, treated him as if he were a vulnerable, misunderstood genius. Every time Atticus got into difficulty, they pretended that the entire world was out to get him. He's sensitive, Harlow would reply. People provoke him. Ronan said it as if the rest of us were the problem. Meanwhile, I remained silent in the background. I didn't need much. They didn't ask for much. Apparently, that meant I didn't deserve much either. I vividly recall the first time I saw the difference. I was 7, and I had earned a tiny reading prize at school. Nothing big, just a certificate and a small ribbon. I waited at the classroom door while everyone else was picked up. Atticus had thrown a fit at home that morning, smashing a cabinet door. So Harlow dealt with him. When she eventually arrived, she raced by me, using that clipped, impatient tone that usually indicated the same thing. Get in the car, Wesley. I don't have time today. She didn't even glance at the ribbon in my hand. Things like that did not happen once. They happened until it no longer felt like bad timing and more like a law. My events became afterthoughts, and background noise behind whatever Atticus had set on fire that week. If I brought something home that I was proud of, I learned to keep it quiet since displaying it too much made it easier to overlook. After a while, I stopped inviting them to come. Not because I didn't care, but because I was tired of seeing hope turn into disgrace. One individual noticed. My uncle Elijah is Ronan's older brother. He was a mechanic with grease on his hands and a forthright style of speaking that left no room for foolishness. When he came by, he'd give me a nod and say, "You holding up, kid?" Not in a pity manner. He seemed to truly want to know. When Atticus screamed at everyone or threw something across the room, Elijah was the only one who spoke the truth. "Ronan, the boy's out of control," he'd say. "You're not doing him any favors." Ronan usually shrugged him off with a big line about how difficult parenting is and how others don't understand what we go through. Harlow always added something like, "Atticus is special. You wouldn't get it." One day in particular stood out. Atticus had gotten into another brawl at school, and Ronan returned home enraged with sluggish teachers. Harlow drifted behind him, as if they were experiencing a tragedy rather than Atticus's repercussions. I had a certificate for a district-wide arithmetic test. I placed it on the counter anyhow to see if they would notice. Ronan pushed it off without reading it. Harlow did not even pretend. "Not now, Wesley. Your brother is going through something serious." Atticus then strolled in, bragging about punching a youngster, and everyone laughed. Actually laughed, as if it were a funny story. Harlow ruffled his hair. Ronan remarked, "That's my boy." I picked up my certificate from the floor. That was the moment I realized I wasn't competing against my brother. I was competing against their desire to continue lying about him, and I was never going to win. Elijah showed up later in the evening. He sighed as he looked at the dent in the wall and Harlow caring for Atticus on the couch. He followed me to the garage, where I was hiding. "Don't let them make you small," he said. "You're not the problem here." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. But it was the first time an adult ever said it out loud. Something about my parents' style of running the house was unusual. That was the version of myself they promoted. The child who realized it was better to disappear than compete with the family favorite. By the time Atticus reached adolescence, our house felt like it was designed for pandemonium. Every month brought a fresh mess. A phone from school, a knock at the door, and Ronan pacing the kitchen as if the universe had targeted his son. What changed was not Atticus. It was my parents. They stopped questioning him. They protected him as if it was their job. The first time I witnessed that defense in public was at a family gathering at my aunt's house. Folding tables, paper plates, and children running in the yard. Atticus arrived with a tight wound. Ronan kept whispering, "Just be cool." Harlow looked at Atticus, as if she was waiting for the moment when the entire day would open up. We lasted about 20 minutes. A cousin joked about Atticus getting grounded again. Atticus snapped. "Say it again," he demanded, moving in. My cousin laughed awkwardly. "I'm kidding, man." Atticus shoved him anyhow. A chair scratched. Drink spilled. The yard became quiet. My aunt hurried over. "Stop it." Ronan approached my cousin first. "Watch your mouth," he yelled. "Don't provoke him." "Provoke him?" my aunt responded. "He shoved my kid." Harlow moved in behind Ronan, her voice shaking. "Atticus has been dealing with a lot. He doesn't respond well to people mocking him. Despicable." That is what she termed it. Uncle Elijah strolled over from the grill, wiping his hands with a rag. He took one look at Atticus. "Enough," he stated. Atticus scoffed. "Mind your business." "It became my business when you put hands on family," Elijah said him. Ronan bristled. "He's having a hard time." Elijah didn't flinch. Harlow screamed, "You know what he's having? No consequences." "Elijah, not here." Elijah nodded, as if he had expected it. "Right. Not here. Not anywhere. That's why this keeps happening." Atticus walked away, smirking, and the group attempted to restart, stiff and strained. Later, my aunt gave me a Pepsi. "How's school, Wesley?" "It's good," I said. "I'm doing really well," she said, smiling. "I heard you're at the top of your class. That's incredible." Harlow appeared quickly. "Wesley's fine," she responded immediately. "He's always been easy." "Easy." As if I didn't count. Ronan glanced towards the yard, where Atticus was already arguing again. "Atticus is the one we're concerned about. He has real problems." After that, the years blurred into the same script. Fights, suspensions, stolen property, angry phone calls, and my parents blaming teachers, neighbors, cops, and anybody else who treated Atticus as a person responsible for his actions. Atticus realized he didn't need to change. He simply had to wait for them to rework the story. My life was constantly on the edge. I had a recognition event because I finished the year at the top of my class. They promised to come. That afternoon, Atticus was dealing with a dilemma. They did not show. I accepted the award, walked home, and didn't mention it. Even so, Elijah heard. That night, he stopped over and sat at our table, as if my efforts were worthwhile. "You did good," he said. "Don't let their chaos rewrite what you earned." My birthdays always went the same way. One year, they forgot until the evening because Atticus had been yelling all day. Ronan pushed money at me and said we'd celebrate later. We never did. In 7th grade, I tried to speak lightly. "It feels like everything is about Atticus." Harlow's expression tightened. "Don't start. Wesley." Ronan didn't glance up. "You've got it easy. Be grateful." My 7th grade graduation clinched the deal. I walked the stage, scanning the folding chairs. They were not there. They were cleaning up Atticus' latest messes all around town. They assured me I would be okay without them. I was. But that's when I stopped waiting. By the time Atticus was in high school, I knew my place in that house. He created gravity, and my parents orbited around him as if nothing else existed. And I learned to disappear before being forced there. To themselves. It was more secure than being spotted first. Atticus's 7th DUI arrest occurred on a Thursday night, only a few weeks after I graduated from high school. The first 4 DUIs were never upheld on paper. My parents paid enough lawyers to sand them down to minor charges and second chances. But this time, he collided with a parked car, and there were too many witnesses and too much damage for anyone to claim it was nothing. I was at the kitchen table, working on college paperwork, when the house phone rang. Harlow responded, fell silent, and then made a moan as if someone had punched the air out of her. She gave the phone to Ronan with trembling hands. All I heard was, "You've got to be kidding me." Then, my son would never do that. He wouldn't have that on him. His voice escalated to the point of yelling. Harlow had already started crying by the time he hung up. "They're out to ruin him," she said. "He's not that kind of boy." Part 2. But the report was unambiguous. Atticus had smashed into a parked car, knocking it halfway up the curb, and when authorities arrived, they saw him slurring and hardly able to stand. They also discovered a tiny bag inside his jacket pocket. The officers listed possession along with the DUI. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't someone else's jacket. It was Atticus, drunk and carrying something illegal. Ronan refused to hear it. "Those cops planted it," he exclaimed, rushing across the kitchen. "They've been harassing him for years." Harlow clung to his arm. "They know he has issues. They take advantage. He's too trusting." I sat there, listening to them alter reality in real time. They didn't say what it was. A child who had never faced consequences was finally at a stage where the system was not going to let things go. By the following morning, the legal bills had already started. Atticus hit a local company owner's automobile, causing substantial damage. Towing and storage expenses piled up, as did documentation regarding court dates, fines, and mandated programs. Ronan flung out figures as if they were nothing. "We'll get a lawyer, a real one, not some public defender trash." Harlow nodded rapidly, as if speed made it true. "We'll figure it out." "We always do." That afternoon, I came home to find a large envelope addressed to me. I knew exactly what it was before I opened it. Acceptance. The first item I ever wanted for myself. I tore it open, read the message twice, and experienced something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement. I walked downstairs, holding it. "I got in," I announced. "This is good. I can finally start planning. So, can we look at the college fund? The one Grandma and Grandpa set up?" The entire room became silent. Harlow froze totally. Ronan's expression transformed as if I had asked something offensive. He scratched his brow and sighed, sounding rehearsed. "Wesley," he answered. "About that money. What about it?" I inquired. Harlow stepped forward. "It's gone. But not all at once. Just seeped away over the years in legal retainers, court bills, and emergencies they claimed were just temporary, until there was nothing left." The word didn't register at first. I simply stared at her. "Gone. How?" Ronan demanded. "Your brother needed help. Legal bills aren't cheap. We had to protect him." I assumed he was joking. "You used my college fund on Atticus's arrests." "It wasn't your fund," Harlow stated forcefully. "It was for the family and Atticus needed it more. He wouldn't survive prison." I held up the letter. "I've been planning for this since middle school. Grandma told me." Harlow cut me off. "Don't bring her into this. She didn't know what Atticus would go through." "So all of it?" I inquired. "Everything they saved for me." Ronan stepped closer, as if he were about to scold me. "You're smart. You'll be fine. You'll get scholarships. You'll work. Real life isn't handed to you. But Atticus gets everything handed to him," I muttered. Harlow's face twisted. "Don't talk about your brother like that. You should be proud we kept him safe." She said, "Proud. Proud that they depleted my only safety net because Atticus couldn't remain sober long enough to escape a felony." Ronan shook his head, as if I had disappointed him. "I'm not going to argue. Family steps up. You should want to help." At that point, something clicked for me. Every ignored birthday, every missed event, and every time they advised me to take it easy. It all ended here. Atticus didn't just arrive first. He was the only person who ever counted. I did not yell. I did not argue. I headed back upstairs, grabbed 2 bags, filled them with what I needed, and returned downstairs. Harlow stared at the bags as if she couldn't believe it. "Where are you going?" she inquired. "Somewhere that isn't here." "Wesley," Ronan exclaimed. "Don't be dramatic," but I was already on my way out the door. Outside, Elijah leaned against his truck, arms folded, as if he were waiting. Someone must have called him. Or maybe he just knew how nights like this ended in our family. He looked at the bags and then at me. "You're done, huh?" "Yeah," I replied. He reached into his pocket, drew out a wad of dollars, perhaps a couple hundred, and put them into my hand. "Take it. Get yourself set up somewhere. And listen to me, kid. You didn't break this family." He glanced toward the house. "They did." I didn't look back as I departed. There was nothing to gaze at. I left my parents' place with 2 bags and enough cash from Elijah to cover around a week of groceries. I was 17, so I could rent a place despite having no knowledge how to live. I did not have a plan. I just needed some distance. The cheapest accommodation I could find was a shared house on the outskirts of town. I'd never met these 3 guys before. We were all renting rooms in a place kept together with duct tape and luck. The bathroom door was barely closed. The kitchen sink leaked nonstop. And the living room smelled like old takeout. My room was just wide enough for a mattress and a folding table, but it was mine. I obtained a job at a petrol station within a week. Minimum salary, rotating shifts, and a boss who pretended that stocking shelves was complicated. I did not complain. It was the first time I felt completely responsible for my own life. Despite the fact that my rent was low, I was barely making ends meet. Some weeks, I'd open my bank app and see only single digits. Overdraft costs became a recurring penalty for making incorrect assumptions about how much I could afford. Food was basic. Instant noodles, $1 pre-made entrees, and whatever was marked down at the end of the week. I rode the bus everywhere. Some nights, the last bus home might not arrive. And I'd walk 50 minutes back to the house, hoping no one would follow me. I learned to stretch each dollar until it shattered. After a few months, I started working extra shifts in a warehouse, loading trucks, stacking pallets, and doing whatever else was needed. It paid slightly more, but the task left my back sore and my hands torn up. I'd arrive home fatigued, wipe off the sweat and dust, and fall asleep as soon as I touched the mattress. The housemates did not help. One guy ate everything remained in the fridge. Another person played loud games till 2 a.m. The third smoked inside despite our complaints, but we all had the same purpose: survive the month and pay your rent on time. That was sufficient to maintain the calm. Budgeting was something I learned by failing repeatedly. I would splurge and then eat peanut butter sandwiches until payday. I'd forget a bill, get charged a fee, and have to forego a bus pass. It took time, mistakes, and silent frustration, but I eventually started keeping track. A notebook, a cheap calculator, and a tight checklist tacked to the wall. Elijah checked on me every few weeks. He'd drive by in his truck, gaze at my worn-out sneakers, and ask, "You eating?" I'd nod. He never lectured. He would give me tools and show me how to patch, fix, or stretch something. When I eventually got a junky old automobile for a few $100s, he spent an afternoon in the driveway assisting me with hose and belt replacements. That car trembled at every stoplight, yet it got me to work without using the bus. After nearly a year of scraping by, I began to consider returning to school. The acceptance letter was the only bright spot in an otherwise bleak situation. I didn't have a college fund anymore, but I still wanted anything better than swinging a mop or hauling pallets at 3 a.m. I applied to a community college instead. Cheaper, closer, more realistic. I used a borrowed laptop to complete financial aid forms, write scholarship essays, and save every penny from overtime shifts. When the permission emails arrived, it felt like a door opened. I registered in a couple classes to get started. Nothing heavy, just enough to test if I could manage it with work. My days evolved into a rough structure. Warehouse at dawn, gas station in the afternoon, class in the evening, return home, study, sleep, and repeat. It seems horrible when written down, but it wasn't. It was the first time in my life that I had a plan that wasn't influenced by someone else's disarray. Meanwhile, Atticus continued his downward spiral. I'd learn about him from Elijah or neighbors. More battles, another wreck, and fresh charges. Harlow and Ronan didn't modify their tune. They contacted me a few times, always using the same method. No greeting, no check-in, only guilt. "Your brother is going through something tough," Harlow would say. "You should come home and help," Ronan said. Help what? Calm him down? Pay something? Sit in the background while they pretended he was fine? I ultimately stopped responding. If I picked up, the chat was always about Atticus. If I didn't, they sent me lengthy texts about how I was abandoning my family. They never asked how I was doing, but I didn't need them anymore. That was the difference. With employment and education, things gradually stabilized. I paid the rent on time. I learned how to cook actual meals. Rice, eggs, and vegetables, from the cheap